Hello, my name is Michelle, and you're listening to Profit is a Choice. On the podcast today is Susan Woodcock. Susan is the owner of Home Dec Gal, a how-to sewing resource and custom workroom in Western North Carolina. She is a Bluprint instructor, which is what used to be known as Craftsy. She's also an international speaker and an author. She has written the book and had it published called Singer Sewing Custom Curtains, Shades, and Top Treatments. Together with her husband, Rodger Walker, Susan co-produces the Custom Workroom Conference, which is an educational event and trade show. And in 2017, Susan and Rodger founded the Custom Workroom Technical Center, which you're going to hear more about on our call today, or as we all lovingly call it, Workroom Tech. It's a hands-on training facility dedicated to the workroom industry. Susan gives a lot of credit to her mom with teaching her how to sew and inspiring her career of creativity. So on the podcast today, Susan and I are going to focus on two topics as it relates to profitability. And that's profitability of character, speech, personal development, and money. And those topics around personal responsibility and support in the industry are going to be where we are giving our main focus. Susan and I have a very candid discussion on the trends that we have seen and what we are continuing to see with regard to taking responsibility for our actions or our inaction. We discuss how this relates to our core values, which should be a guide to all of our decision making. And even with a seemingly heavy topic, we're going to find plenty of places to laugh. So get out your core value sheet and review them, and then listen in to see if you're working in alignment in all areas of your life and business. Every day, empowered entrepreneurs are taking ownership of their company financial health and enjoying the rewards of reduced stress and more creativity. With my background as a financial software developer, owner of multiple businesses in the interior design industry, educator, and speaker, I coach women in the interior design industry to increase their profits, regain ownership of their bottom line, and to have fun again in their business. Welcome to Profit is a Choice. Hey, Susan, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Michelle. Thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here.
Oh, I am so excited. I think I emailed you right after I started the podcast, and I was like, Susan, I want you to be on, and then just trying to find the right timing for both of us and everything. We're busy women here.
Yes.
So I'm glad that we were able to pull this together. And so what I'd love to do is, I've told a little bit of your bio, but I'd love for our listeners to hear what you do right now. You have, I would say, 2 to 3 really great offerings and great ways that you serve this industry between the podcast, the conference, and your workroom tech. So I just want you to tell everybody a little bit about those.
Okay. Well, it's been an interesting journey. This is my 31st year in business, and a lot's the same. I still sew for designers and work to the trade. I only work for one design firm now. When I was full-time workroom, I had 6 or 7 designers and 2 employees, so I was quite busy, but I still keep my hands on and in the workroom industry. And that started in 1988. And then in 2003, I started teaching with Cheryl Strickland and her conferences and at her school. And then in 2010, I started Home Dec Gal, which is sort of a workroom and education combined. And then in 2015, I have all these years I'm trying to keep straight. Rodger and I decided to start a conference. So our first conference was actually in 2016, but we started the business in 2015. And then in 2017, we opened a hands-on training center called Custom Workroom Technical Center, which we shortened to Workroom Tech so people can remember. And that's what we're doing mostly now, mostly focused on the annual conference and Workroom Tech, and then a little workroom sewing on the side.
And then you have the podcast. Tell us the name and the information on the podcast.
Oh, great. Yes.
You know what? Let's say this. Regardless of whether you're a designer or a drapery workroom, your podcast gives so much great information on window treatments. And I know a lot of the interior designers are saying, where can I get really good information so I know enough, or I know the questions to ask? So even if they're not the ones sewing, I just want all the listeners to know that it is a podcast that needs to be on your list that you follow.
Yeah, I think it's a great resource for designers. It's called 30 Minutes with Workroom Tech, and it's produced through the So Much More podcast with Seal DeGuglielmo. So you can go on somuchmorepodcast.com or on the Workroom Tech website to get the links. And we've covered everything from terms and acronyms to fullness and cord safety for window treatments and box pleat balances and applying trims. And it's a 30-minute podcast, so it's really focused. And I call it a podcast for busy people because you've got 30 minutes until your appointment, or you've got 30 minutes for your lunch, or it's a great time to just take a quick focus on something. And I follow up on the Workroom Tech blog with more details. I'll include video, how-to photos, things that are written out, things that you can download. So even though it's a short podcast, there's still a lot of information that supports the podcast.
Absolutely. So Susan, when you have moved and changed and morphed in your business, which, I love all that. I've done the same in mine. Did you plan for profitability from the beginning in all of the endeavors or in certain ones? How did you think about profitability when you started some of these?
Well, when I started my first workroom business in 1988, I was just out of college. I was 25 years old, and I just thought I was successful if I had enough money to pay my rent and utilities.
Right.
That was
Yeah.
my goal. That was my goalpost. It was just making a car payment. And I should preface that with saying my mother had a drapery workroom in our home, so it was what I knew. I went to college and studied fine art and crafts. I was a textiles major. My last year of college was weaving and felt making, and so I was working with textiles, but not necessarily window treatments and design. So leaving college as an art major, there's not job opportunities. You don't go and apprentice with an artist.
Right.
You don't find that in the classifieds then in the newspaper. And or artists wanted. So I just went to what I knew, which was workroom. So I had one designer that I was familiar with, and she contacted me and asked me if I'd sew for her, and that's how we got started. And it really was sort of just finding my way, and the business matured as I matured. So
yeah, mine did the same thing. I do remember the days where I was like you said, if I could just make a car payment, if I can make the braces payment, just all the little things that needed to be done. What is it that I can do? If I can pay for the vacation, right now I'm doing, I'm adding in college.
Oh goodness, I can't even imagine.
Oh yeah. So I think we're in year 6 of college, and we had 2 that were overlapped. So if they were linear, we'd be in about the 8th year. So I got one more to go after this one.
Wow.
And then hopefully I'll be done.
But I will say, as we've started these other businesses, when we started Home Dec Gal and Workroom Tech and the conference, I was smarter, had more education, had been in the industry a lot longer, and certainly created those businesses with a goal of profitability. There was never it wasn't a hobby. It didn't grow from a hobby. It was to make a living.
And I think too, like you said, I did the same as, when I first got started, it was because I was doing something I enjoyed. Somebody rang my doorbell and said, "Hey, I love what you've done in your house. I'll pay you." And, within 30 minutes, I'd started a business. And like you, I learned as I went along, and I was not profitable at the very beginning. It didn't mean I didn't make money, but it wasn't sometimes it was a negative for me.
Yeah.
However, I learned quickly, because that pain is a sharp pain. And so as, like you said, I got older, I matured, I saw what was working, what wasn't working, what the market would do and bear. And then even just stopping and going back and trusting myself with what I knew and had learned in business. And then of course, shifted mine and then all the other businesses that I've either started or bought or whatever was with an idea towards what could the profitability be? Like,
Yeah.
what could this look like? And so I do think that's encouraging for the listeners who think, oh my gosh, I'm not profitable now. It doesn't mean that's where you got to stay. It
Right.
just means you can learn and evolve and change your business practices to support you as you go forward.
And I think there's a lot of people that don't realize that you can have a career of creativity. It can be a career where you use your talents and your skills. And a lot of people see it as the starving artist, as someone that's sewing. And you absolutely can have a great career. Just got to be smart.
I think almost it's easier now than it was when I started, because people appreciate, even just Etsy online. And there's this whole find your creativity, find your passion, it's so different now. I think we almost have a higher level of opportunity than we did 20 years ago.
Absolutely. And the perception has changed of who we are and what we do. And that's been gradual, but it's in a great place now.
Yeah, I always laugh when people say to me, I went to art school and the starving artist comes up, and I said, well, why can't you be a well-fed artist? I don't understand. Like, I'm going to eat from the buffet, right?
I remember my senior year of college, we had like one day so if you're going to be an artist, you're going to be self-employed, and you need to pay taxes, and you need to, do these things and get a tax ID number. That was it.
Yeah. Happy business planning, right?
Yes.
That's all you need to know. So, Susan, you and I are going to focus on two aspects of, I would say, maybe business that does have an impact on our profit. And it's in a little bit different way than maybe some of the other podcasts. I know I've already had some out that we've talked about ADD. We've had all kinds of other podcasts where we looked kind of outside of what people think of. You and I made the comment, when we think of profitability, some people just think of the numbers. But really, it's kind of like the question that Seal asked, how do you define success? I would suggest that we can define profit different. Now, I'm all about making money profit, right?
Right.
In a good way. I'm all about that, because we've got to pay, we got to eat, we're not going to starve, and we need a house. So I'm all for that. But I do think there is an aspect of it at what cost? What are we trading off for it? And what does it look like? And really thinking about the profitabilities of our heart and our soul at the end of the day.
Yes. And it's about having a well-rounded business. It's not just focusing on numbers.
Right. And so the two aspects we're going to look at today are personal responsibility and then offering support in our industry. So let's jump in and chat about personal responsibility a little bit. Why do you think it is so important for us to have personal responsibility for what we're doing, what we're putting out, our service, our product? And then how do you see that playing out in the business?
I think it's just I've become more sensitive to it the longer I've been in business and the more I'm working in education, where I see people passing the buck or not standing up and saying I was at fault, or not standing up and saying what could I have done differently. There's certainly times when the customer's at fault,
right?
But instead of just blaming the customer, you need to say to yourself, okay, there were red flags there. I didn't listen to my instincts. And that's taking personal responsibility for the failure of that relationship. For us, it's about sticking to our core values and everything we do. And I know we've talked about this before. Our core values are integrity, service, and creativity. And we apply that to all of our business decisions, whether it's a client or a customer, or choosing a supplier or a subcontractor, or dealing with a problem. So it helps us to stay focused on our personal responsibility in the business and our goals. And it's been helpful for me to keep it that simple.
I read one time, the customer's not always right, but they are always powerful.
Yes, very good.
And that has always stuck with me, because I started my first job out of college working for a software firm, and I was on the help desk for accounts payable. So every time something went wrong in their online accounts payable, I got a phone call. I couldn't do this. This didn't work. This didn't connect to the purchase order. Imagine like a QuickBooks help desk kind of thing, was except on steroids and mainframes and a long time ago. And you have a dumb terminal in front of you. No, there were no PCs or any of that. So anyway, and I'm digging into code, trying to find answers. And I can remember hearing in college, the customer's always right. The customer's always right, like drilled into our heads in business school. And I'm sitting at my desk going, but they're not right. They're not right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I had a hard time with, how do I say to them, you're not right, but then also give them service and product, that we needed to do and stand behind the company. And so when I heard that the customer is not always right, that immediately was like, okay, I'm not crazy here. They're not, but they are powerful. And so what are you going to do about that? And I would almost say, from my perspective, the same way that we said that it's almost easier to be artistic and creative in your passions today, I would almost say people used to take more personal responsibility than they are today. I think that one's almost gone in the opposite direction, because I remember when I was little, my dad's big thing was, your yes is your yes and your no is your no, and you stand on your word. And if you give somebody a handshake, man, that was as good as a signed contract, even if it was to your detriment. You shook that man's hand or woman's hand and you looked them in the eye, and that meant something. And I'm like you, we're out on the forums, we're in Facebook groups, we're out watching and seeing. And again, it's not that the client is always right, but it is how we're going to deal with it in a way that maintains our integrity, right? As well as the integrity of the client or the vendor or whoever is the other person in the relationship with us.
And I'll see people ask on the Facebook groups that we belong to for the workroom industry and design industry. I made a mistake. I ordered something wrong, or I cut something wrong, or it was supposed to be 2 windows and I made, only quoted enough fabric for 1. What should I tell the customer? What do I do? And it's you go back to, you own up to it, right? That's integrity.
Right.
You offer to make it right. And that's service. And then you come up with a solution that's being creative. It might
That's
be,
right.
And often it's if you let the customers help you with that. If you have a good relationship with someone and they like you, I've never had to buy fabric when I made a mistake. The designers are always like, thank you for letting me know. I'll order more trim.
Right. Because usually when we tell them, we're telling them the best that we can. Listen, I had, a tile installer putting tile, and we ran out, and he didn't say to me, I'm sorry, I'm going to go have to buy more tile. He said, you need more tile. If you'd like for us to finish this around, you really need more tile. And so we went and bought more, but I also understood he was trying to not over purchase. Right.
Yeah.
And so it happens, but it happens for all of us. It happens no matter what we're doing. But number one, because we're humans, and I think we need to really pour some grace on ourselves. We are going to make mistakes, even with online technology, even with spreadsheets, even with the process and procedures manual. There are things that on occasion will happen. And, it's really going to be, how are we going to handle that?
Yeah. And it's, you don't ever, we were talking about accepting responsibility for our mistakes, but, like you said, the customer isn't always right. And you don't want to ever let anyone compromise your core values and try to force you to do things that you don't feel are a good fit for you, to lower your price, or to go behind somebody's back and
Right.
you don't want to let people force you to compromise your core values. You stay strong with that, and you can use those same core values to say no.
Yes.
It doesn't fit in with our values. It doesn't. This relationship doesn't feel right. It's not everybody's going to be your customer and work the way you want to.
Right. Or your vendor.
Absolutely. I work with vendors. I had someone ask me the other day about a little student, and she asked, what are the prices compared to this vendor to that vendor? And I said, I have no idea. I haven't priced their prices in years. I just like them.
Yeah.
I always get my order right. It's delivered on time. It's a great product. And uh, I
And
don't
I'm moving on.
I don't know what their prices are compared to another vendor.
Right. And, so for me, because I'm always going in doing financial analysis for my clients and those in the industry, I may ask them, what about the vendor? Why did you choose this vendor? What if you could get it at a better price? But we're not only looking at price, right?
Right.
Because if they were to say to me, well, I can get it at a better price, but the order's wrong, it's 4 days late, something's broken, it's overpackaged, whatever the answer is, then that's really not worth the savings that they're having. And I think this goes back to, this makes me think of what you said a minute ago, depending on the relationship you have. And I think that's the relationship that we cultivate with our clients, the relationship we cultivate with our colleagues, and the relationship we cultivate with our vendors. Yeah. And I'm like you, when I find a vendor that is serving me, that is doing what I need them to do, I form a relationship with them. And I want to protect that as much as I possibly can, knowing that they're protecting it on their side as well.
And isn't that what we want from our customers?
Yes.
Do I want my designers that I work with, every job, every drapery order they have, to go and compare my price with other workrooms to see if they still want to use me?
No.
No.
And designers don't want that either, right? None of us want.
No, I'm not going to treat my preferred vendors that way either.
No, we don't. Like, you can watch, if you're watching out ever on the blinds and shutters installers kind of page, it blows my mind. I think because people look at maybe that sometimes as a commodity, that these people will go into that customer's house and they will see another blind company leaving, and as they wrap up, the third blind company's coming in to give
my goodness.
And I want to say to the homeowner, you know what? Most of these people are going to want to run away from you. You know what I'm saying? Yes. But it's the same thought of us jumping from vendor to vendor to vendor, only searching on price. And we would never have our clients purchase from us based on price, always on quality, always on value, and price is always third.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Let me ask you this. With personal responsibility, why do you think it's so difficult, or why do you think that there's been this shift of pointing the fingers and making everybody else responsible, or just not even wanting to? I mean, let's be honest, it's not easy to deal with. All right. We can all admit that. And some of them are sticky and some of them cause us to fall on the sword. I get it. But it's always been that way, right? It's not like our problems just all of a sudden showed up as problems. I mean, they've always been around. But why do you think that we are struggling, I would say, in a grander scheme, for being able to handle the responsibility that we really should kind of own up to as business owners?
Well, for my own personal feeling, it's probably fear. The same fear that you have to ask for a price you think you're worth. It's that same fear of admitting you're wrong, or go back to being a child. It's sort of like the fear that you're going to get in trouble. And you'll cover up for it. You'll deflect it. You'll blame somebody else instead of taking responsibility. I mean, it's childish.
I agree.
It's the way it is.
I think it's also that fear of, I don't know how to solve it. The fear of, I'm going to have to pay for it all by myself.
Yeah.
The fear of, are they going to think I'm stupid or incompetent? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That less than. The fear of, are my colleagues going to find out? What if other people, it's just, I agree with you. It's tied in to everything. Years ago, we had, I have asthma, and I had been having some extremely severe issues. And after getting out of the hospital at Thanksgiving one year.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was really bad. I won't tell you how bad because it's pretty graphic, but I'll just say they didn't make me sit in the waiting room. And by the time I got out of the hospital, they came back and said, you need to get every bit of carpet out of your house. No life Christmas tree, nothing can be in your house. And so we came in, and almost our whole main floor was carpet at the time. Our home was 20 years old. And in January, we pretty much paid to have all the carpet ripped out and all the hardwoods put in. Okay. So it was a very expensive undertaking. And the people that came in to put our hardwoods in were highly recommended. They were great. We had a good relationship with them. Well, we had a pedestal sink. You remember those? You don't see them
Yes. Yeah.
anymore. But we had the old pedestal sink in our half bath downstairs. And they took the pedestal out while they were working on the floor. And they took the floor up. And they were in another room, and all of a sudden, the top part, the basin, fell off the wall.
Oh,
because
no.
nothing
was holding it up.
Right. And so you can imagine it was attached to a pipe that brings water into your home. And so we have this spray, this geyser of water in our house. And so they run and get the water turned off. Then they've got to bring in fans and dry out our house. Long story short, they do all that. In the meantime, my son breaks his collarbone and dislocates his shoulder playing football in the front yard. So I'm in the hospital with him now. Okay.
Goodness.
Right. And it gets better. So then the next, they finally get the house put back together. I get my son home. We've got him all plastered up. And we think they're done. They wrap up, they leave the house. And that was like on a Thursday, Friday. On Monday, I walk in my front door and I look in my front room and my whole floor is buckled up. Like it's like a dome.
Oh,
and I'm like, what? And there was a tiny leak inside the wall and had leaked into that room and ruined it. They had to come back in, strip out all the hardwood floors, dry everything back out, and re-hardwood that room. And I'm telling you that because it was a big deal. It was expensive. They ended up having to go into our downstairs basement and redo ceilings. And we had them, because I'm so asthmatic, they had to remove all of the drywall. I mean, right? Because black mold, I mean, it was a hot mess. I bet you they didn't make $5 off that job. But here's my point in all that. As bad as that was, I would recommend them to this day.
Yeah.
Because we saw that it happened. It wasn't intentional. They owned up to every single bit of it immediately. They didn't make us wait when we said, look, we're doing this because she just got out of the hospital. You know, we can't just assume that the drywall and everything up inside the floor and the ceiling is going to dry. We've got to get it out and really do. They went the extra mile for every single bit of it. And so that is what I remember about the job. I remember what happened because it was just like, okay, how much more in one little short amount of time? But they stood up for the product, they stood up for their service, and they stood up for the client.
Yeah. How you handle problems in your business is probably more important than when you get it right. You know, and we all focus on, perfection and making beautiful things and doing the best for our customers and pleasing everybody. But it's when a problem arises and how you handle it, that can be make or break your business.
There's one of my favorite books, I think I've shared before, is called Failing Forward by John Maxwell. Mm-hmm. And he mentions in there, like, there are these 3 questions, and I use them all the time. So when all these things happen, and it kind of goes back to if we missed our intuition or that gut instinct, or we ignored the red flags, or we thought I can fix it, or whatever it was. But his 3 questions really try to get you out of the middle of the weeds of the scenario, right? And so the first question basically is, what went really well? And I would do it again. What didn't go so well and it needs to be changed, added, deleted, fixed, right? In whatever way. And then the third is, what did I learn?
Yeah.
What did I learn? Because if you can tie it back to, here's what I've learned, that actually goes all the way back. I think you mentioned earlier too, where in the process did this go off the rails? Because it doesn't just all of a sudden be great one day and go off the rails the next day. Like even with our floor, it went off the rails when he took the pedestal out and didn't stick something back under it. That was the start of everything.
Yeah.
Right? You could trace it all back to that. And so we know, okay, so next time what I learned is do not take the pedestal out without putting support back under it if I'm not going right back in the room in 5 minutes. Huge lesson there.
Yes.
So I do think that is important. And I think it's important when we share areas where we're struggling in Facebook or in any other of these online forums. I do think we need to be very careful to make sure we own up to what we have done.
Yeah.
One of the things we used to do when we were raising the boys, they were 2.5 years apart, and they would come, and of course, as all kids do, they want to tell me what the other one did to them.
Of course.
Because I can hear and I see there's a hole in the wall, and I'm still hearing stories. They're 21 and 24, and I'm still hearing stories now of what the behind the scenes of what was really going on back then. But when they would come and say, Mom, I want to tell you what the other one did. Mom, I want to tell you what the other one did. We made it a rule in our house. Before you can tell me what your brother did, you have to tell me exactly what you did.
Yeah.
Don't tell me, what your brother did. And so they were like, but he what did you do? What did you do? You tell me every single thing you did. Tell me every reaction and every action. And then I would flip to the other kid and I would say, now you tell me everything you did. Then by that point, they both were so guilty.
Well, I can hear it now, and we might be getting feedback from this podcast with Workroom saying, but the designer threw me under the bus. Yeah, but.
So let's talk about that.
The Workroom didn't live up to what they said they were going to do.
That's right. And so two things here. That's why we have to be very careful who we choose to do business with.
That's right.
That's why we have to use those core values to choose our clients.
Yes.
We have to choose them or use them to choose our subcontractors, our vendors, everybody. Like I know my why, I know my mission and my vision and my values. And I have them printed. And I literally, when an opportunity comes up, I look at them and go, does it fit?
Does it fit?
Does it fit?
Yeah.
And is it good for me now? Or is it best for me now? Right? Like, Is this right? And be willing to walk away. But you bring up, I think, the point that's going to lead us into the second part of the conversation. So-and-so threw me under the bus, right? Fill in the blank of whatever person it was. So-and-so threw me under the bus. And I see a lot of this as well that I think all of these things can create negative mindsets. And when we have these negative mindsets, that is what kind of leads into affecting, I think, our profitability because we're choosing the wrong subs, we're choosing the wrong clients. We're working negative, and then it's harder to do a great job when you're angry.
Yeah.
Right? So how can we make sure that we work as a team and not throw others under the bus?
My question when people feel that way is, why are you working with them? Why is, and I understand an interior designer might be under contract with a client and they've got to get through the job. But as a workroom, if you have a design firm that you're working with that doesn't respect your core values, then sever the relationship. You just have to stand up for yourself and have confidence in yourself and your business and be your business. I see a lot of workrooms over the years that have said that they weren't respected by interior designers and or were yelled at or
right.
people and in my 31 years of working, I've always been to the trade of working with interior designers. I have never had that happen, ever. I've never been disrespected. I've never been treated as anything other than a partner. So it can be done. So, maybe it's time to reflect. And there were some cases, we all get stressed. And I can look back on those now and go, well, that didn't get done because I was up all night sewing and I should have planned better. Or, I can look back and find where I was at fault for anything that might have caused a problem. And but I can't think of a better career than I've had working with interior design professionals. Absolutely love it.
And to that same point, if an interior designer has a workroom that's not supporting them and that is not trying, they've got to sever it back.
Yes.
And now in my 16 years of having a workroom, I only had one interaction with one designer that was disrespectful. Actually, two. There were two. I had two that were disrespectful and that were not the core values that I would work with. And one was because I was asked to provide all of these references. I was asked to provide just this whole list of things that I was to provide so they could decide if they wanted to work with my workroom. And I asked for the same things in return.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they got angry with me and said, how dare you ask me for these things? And I said, well, if we're trying to come into this as equals and collaborators to get your project done, unless you're paying me 100% upfront for every single thing you're doing, you're asking me to be your bank. And so therefore, as your bank, I'd like to know that you can pay. I want to know why you're leaving the other workroom. I want to know what your business policies are. And they were so offended. They kept sending me all of their letters behind their name and telling me, they pretty much were telling me why I was wrong. And I knew in that moment, I'd never had somebody treat me that way. I had always worked with designers and subcontractors and vendors who looked at me as a professional. I presented myself professionally. And so it was always just very collaborative and very supporting. And when I saw that, I was like, what just happened? And it made me so strong in the fact that they did not respect my core values. Right. They didn't respect me. And they were offended because I asked them to provide the same information for me that they wanted me to provide to them. And so that, we all know that. But let's talk about for a minute, like we're in the game here, right? And it's all going to heck. It's falling apart. It's falling apart. I think a couple of things that I also see. There's a lot of supposition that goes on. Mm-hmm. When you watch out on these groups and people talking, and they are assuming what the other person's thinking or assuming what the other person's done. Yes. Or they're looking at it and going, well, they're not respecting the fact that I did 5 hours for free, but they never told them that they did those 5 hours. Yes. So they're angry and frustrated because the other person doesn't have the full story and is reacting to what they know. And so I am constantly out there. I know you do the same, going, you need to pick up the phone and have a conversation. Please quit texting. Please quit emailing, because you probably have a mean face when you're emailing. You totally read that when it comes in. Pick up the phone and do it with the idea of this is one of the things I taught at your conference last year. And when we talked about what do I want the end result of our conversation to be? I want it to be that the client's happy and that we're both preserved. That's what I want. And if I go into it with that, 9 times out of 10, the other person's going to come along with me. Yeah. But if I go into that conversation with, I am going to crush you and smush you like a bug, I can do that. But that's not going to get me what I want. In that moment, I might get a check for a win, but I'm going to feel horrible later. And it is not going to build the relationships that align with my core values. And then I'm going to feel shame and guilt. And so it's just not worth it.
Yeah, that's true. That's funny.
But right? We don't pick up the phone anymore. And then everybody.
No, I'm guilty of that. And a lot of times with the business, you need to have something in writing. If it's just a phone call and you say, oh, but on the phone, you said that you would throw that in for free. I was like, no, that's not what I said.
Right, but it can all get cleared up if we just go in. The other thing that I've heard with communication, and it has been a good one too, and it says, it may have been Zig Ziglar. I should probably figure out who said it. I always remember what they said, but none of this is original. I didn't make this up. But it says, seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So to me, if there are two things in conversation, or when we're in these sticky pieces and places and we're trying to take personal responsibility and we want to be supportive of the collaboration and the relationship, if I go into this, where it's all falling apart and I go, okay, my goal here is for the client to be whole, for us to be able to work this out, for us to, in a very positive space so that we can give and take to make it work. And I first want to go in and understand their point of view, and then I'll explain mine.
Yeah.
I'm literally coming in pretty much with my hands open going, not I'm giving up. I'm here to work this out.
And that probably one thing I learned early on was when there was a situation, I would just ask the customer, what can I do to make it right? To see what they have to say. Instead of going in and said, okay, I'm only going to do this, or I could do this, or how much is it going to cost me? Say, what do I need to do to make it right? And often it's not as much as you think.
Yes, absolutely.
So you sort of give them the power. And then if they say, something outrageous, and you say, well, no.
Let's back that down.
I can't do that.
Yeah. You're right, though. A lot of times they ask for a lot less than what we think they're going to. So our fear stops us from asking that question. But if we'll just move through it, it usually isn't as much as we think.
Yeah. And on the other hand, when someone wants a rush order or for you to do something out of the ordinary, instead of going, okay, well, let me go on Facebook and ask people, what do they charge for a rush order?
Right.
You just ask the customer, what's it worth to you? And you'd be
Yeah.
surprised. It might not be that important to them,
Right.
or they might pay you double.
Right. Or double plus. It's according to how much they want it.
Like,
Right.
How important is it to you?
Right. What are you willing to pay for this fair exchange of me rushing it?
Yeah.
So, Susan, let's talk about that support. So, we talked about kind of personal responsibility and challenges where things don't go well,
Yeah.
or in relationships or product or whatever. But we also need to be supportive of each other, which is why I like to go into those conversations going, if this was a designer that I really loved, or this was a vendor that I loved, or a sub, and I really want to preserve all of us, you know what I mean? How can I support them and not throw them under the bus to the client and not be thrown under it myself, right? How can I keep all of us out from under the bus?
Thank you.
Because I want to preserve because I want to preserve the relationship. And you had shared with me that there was a theme that kept coming back to you. And you said it was scripture based, and it says, rejoice when others rejoice and mourn when others mourn. And I think you said it was from the book, I Would Like You More If You Were More
Like Me. Yes.
By John Ortenberg. Share a little bit about why that particular phrase has stuck with you, and how it's maybe impacted how you have kind of shown up, if you will. I'm doing air quotes that everybody, how you've kind of shown up online, and what this has meant.
Well, it's, a lot of, I know you might have a theme or a word for the year or something like that. And I don't really do that, but I read this book, and that one part just kept coming back to me. And the whole book is about relationships and having relationships with people. And in the book, he's quite different than his wife. So just when they got married, trying to learn how to be married to somebody that's different than you are.
Right.
It's kind of funny. But that really stuck with me because of the competitiveness of business. And you can really get wrapped up in competing against people to try to win. And if you're an interior designer and you see an interior designer that gets a client, you want a bigger client, or a workroom, you want to be the best and be recognized, and all of that's important and great for motivating you, but you don't want to do it at the expense of others. And you're not supposed to do it the opposite. So it's rejoice when others rejoice, not rejoice when others fail. So if one of your competitors fails, you're not supposed to be gleeful about it. It's not a great day.
It's almost like that. It's like that other Bible verse that says, "There, but for the grace of God, go I."
Yeah.
Right. In other words, I could have made a mistake, and it could have happened to me. And one of the things I guess it was late last year, I work hard. I just do. I'm not going to act like I'm over here and I'm successful and I've got 4 days on the beach. That is not what happens at my house. Anybody can tell you. My sons have made fun of me for years. I'm like, my mom makes money. She just plays on Facebook. And that's not really what I'm doing. But every time they come in, I happen to be answering some question. And so that's become the family joke. But I remember I had been through a season of building and just working, like everybody does. Everybody has these seasons, right? Where they're trying to get a project out the door, like you said, working all night on window treatments, or you're doing your marketing. It doesn't really matter. You're just working hard to try to get it done. And I pulled up Facebook and I saw another person who would be considered my competition in some ways, not in all, but in some. And I looked at what she was doing, and I immediately felt like I'm behind.
Oh.
This is horrible. This is how does she get that? And
yeah.
And it was a jealousy, and I didn't intentionally mean to start feeling it, but it wasn't that I wanted to take it away from her. I felt less than and horrible, and like I'd been. And then I had to stop myself and go, Michelle, wait a minute. You're working 12-hour days. Like, come on. It's not like I'm eating bonbons, right? That's not what's happening here. I'm trying. And then I stopped and asked myself, who said I was behind? Like, who created the gauge that said I'm behind? Right?
Yeah.
And then I asked myself, I have no idea what she had to give up to get that. You know what I'm saying? We all give up, we all trade something, our time, our money, our effort to get something else. And then I thought to myself, I really just want to be able to do some of the things she's done. So instead of being jealous, I want to bless her. I want to say thank you for leading the way, for showing me that it can be done, for encouraging me. And I made a decision at that point that when I saw somebody doing something that I wanted to do, I was going to stop and I was going to bless them. I was going to pray good things for them, protection for their business, you know, and it changed me 100%. Number one, it made me okay with where I was. But number two, it made me see them differently. And it made me see them, yes, we can compete, but it can be done in a way, I think that I'd mentioned you, it can be kind and competitive. We can't just say we're not going to compete if we're in business. That's just crazy, right?
Right. But you can,
there's some of it.
Control the feelings that you have when someone else succeeds, and you might feel jealousy, or
Yes.
instead of mourning when others mourn, you'll mourn when others succeed. That's not good.
Right.
And
I think we all do it without maybe thinking sometimes,
of
right?
Of course we do. We do it in our personal lives too.
Right.
It's just the way it goes. But just to be able to have that theme for me now, I just take a step back and go, okay, am I feeling like this? Am I mourning because they're succeeding? That's not good.
I think it goes back to fear.
Yeah.
Fear that I'm not where I'm supposed to be, or that I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do, or I'm not getting what I think I deserve. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's almost this self-recognition.
Yeah,
and
that's a lack of confidence too.
Yes. And it comes, I think, with just that awareness of going, wait a minute, hold up. Number one, this isn't good for me to be thinking it about them. And it is not doing me any good to have that negativity, that very fixed mindset, as if there's only so much to go around and I missed out.
Yeah.
And that's not the case. If instead I can change my mindset to the growth mindset that there is plenty out there and it's going to be okay. Now, what do I need to do to stay in my lane and do what I need to do to get what I want? Sometimes I've tried to do what other people did because I looked at it and I'm like, oh, I didn't get what I wanted with that. Like, those were not my ideal clients. Message. Right?
Right. That's true. And I'm a competitive person. That's just, I think it's probably because I'm the youngest of 5. I had 3 brothers. I was always, trying to be one of them, and compete with them. And,
right.
But you can do it in a way that's healthy for you without feeling driven to stomp somebody else down, or, that's not the point.
And again, I would hate to be at the end of the year and go, look at that great number, but I have no friends in the industry. I have no vendors. I have no clients, but wow, I had a great year. Right? I mean, that's crazy.
That's right. That's right. My family hates me. I don't have any friends in the industry, but I've got lots of money in the bank.
I got lots of money in the bank. I mean, said no one ever, I hope. And that's why one of the reasons you and I wanted to have this conversation is just because we've learned over the years too, and even had our own self-awareness, right? Of times that maybe we've competed without kindness. And now wanting to compete with kindness. I think it's interesting too. Seal has had this on her podcast a couple different times where, I'm not really trying to compete. I'm not really trying to compare, but we compete and compare all day. So I'm just not even going to act like we don't.
Yeah.
Because we do. But it can be done in a healthy way. It doesn't have to be done in a negative, cutting, biting, envious, jealous way. It could be comparison for what is it that I want. I always, when I start looking now and I start recognizing these feelings, and I will say this, once I started, and it's probably the same for you, I now catch it faster than I did before. And I take a step back and I say, okay, so Michelle, what do you want to change? Do you want to change your mission? Do you want to change your vision? Do you want to change your strategy? And then I go, oh, wait a minute. I don't want to change any of those things. Then girl, get in your lane and move on. and sometimes it's like, I want to change my strategy. I like that strategy. Then change it. And then I at least feel like I've done that what worked, what didn't work, what did I learn, and I've done something about it instead of letting the thoughts in my head take over.
Yeah, and you don't want to be competitive by trying to copy who somebody else is or what they're
Right.
doing, or copy another business. You want to be authentic and genuine and unique to yourself and your vision. And you got to keep an eye on that. And I guess I would say that you have to compete with your best
Yes,
and not try to copy their best. Does that make sense?
it does. And I love that. I love it. I mean, that's exactly what we have to do is we do the best that we can for us. And we can use other people as ideas or inspiration, change it from I'm going to compare to I want to be inspired by you, or who is inspiring me today,
Yeah.
and kind of let the rest of it go. But I really think we can have a business and have a positive outlook and attitude and relationships with those around us. And with that, I've got to throw out one more thing that I'm just going to say I find terribly rude and unsupportive, and I'm going to go real negative here.
Uh-oh.
If somebody else puts a picture of something that they have done and that they are proud of on Instagram or Facebook and you don't like it, please scroll. Just zip it and scroll. Just please don't go out there and
That's
make
what my mother always said. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Anything at all. And I see in this industry, there's been a couple lately where somebody went on a business page of somebody else and said what they did and didn't like, or they critiqued it. If there's something like I've got, I support designers and workrooms. So if I see somebody put something out on Instagram or on Facebook that I think is not great for their brand, right?
Right.
I had one that one time didn't see it, but had a photograph taken. The room was spectacular, but the sofa had a design and one of the cushions was upside down.
Oh.
And so for me, when I'm looking at it, of course, what do I look at? Pattern match. My eye goes right to pattern match. And so to me, it's like this great big, I didn't go on all her social media and write it. I emailed her privately and I said, for your brand, you're going to want to take this down, flip over the cushion, take another picture and put it back up there, because the picture itself is gorgeous, but that one attention to detail doesn't support where you want to go.
Yeah.
But that's healthy. That's kind. Just, if we're going to support each other, it doesn't have to be our taste. It doesn't have to be what we like, but we can just say to them, I think that's exactly what you say here. If they're rejoicing, just rejoice with them.
Yeah.
Just hit the like or scroll.
It's
right?
just so much easier.
Good night. So much easier. I'm agreeing with you there.
When you look at, freeing up space to do other things and to work harder on things you love and you enjoy, that's something you can let go of. It frees up a lot of space.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Susan, if you could offer a piece of advice to all of those listening in the interior design industry, in all aspects, upholsterers, workrooms, interior designers, whatever, to be more profitable as they consider their own personal responsibility and support of the industry, what would you say?
Be authentic, be your brand. That's something that I've worked very hard at we have three businesses running at once, and it always, everything we do, whether it's a Facebook post or an Instagram photo or a public speaking or anything that we share, it has to fit in with our brand and our core values. So it makes it really easy. Always consistent. Stick with that. Focus on what makes your customer happy, and that is, inspiring and makes them feel confident that they got a great value, and you'll be successful. I mean, it's sort of, if you make your customer happy, it comes back to you. It should.
Yep, absolutely. What's one of the next big profit goals in your business?
Well, we're all about slow and steady wins the race. We don't have big profit goals. It's always building. Obviously, never having less. But just build at a slow and steady pace, gradually increasing the number of customers that we have without sacrificing their experience, and just continue to build relationships for collaboration, because we focus on what we do best, and we can't do it all. And there's a lot of people out there in the industry that can, and I have wonderful friends in the industry that I refer to and have them help me do the things that they do best. And just like being on your podcast today, I'm not a podcaster. I do the podcast with Seal, but she manages all that. And I just show up.
You know what, though? I don't want us to miss that in that building for profitability, right? You're building, you mentioned slow and steady, and you mentioned relationships and collaboration. And to some that might seem slow, but I just want to celebrate the consistency in that.
Yeah.
Sometimes these quick rises to the top can't be trusted.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying they always can't, but sometimes, somebody just shows up one day and you're like, where have you been and why should I trust you? And so I do think that you have done a lot to build trust with your brand over the years, even before you built these last iterations, if you will, of Susan and your talent. But I do want to encourage people, slow and steady is not bad at all. And it's nothing to feel like this is only what we're doing. It is a long game here, right?
Well, it's the analogy can be sort of like you're on the highway and somebody's tailgating you. Can't wait to get around you, and you finally you get over in the right lane so they can get past you, and they buzz down the road, and then 5 minutes later you're both at the stoplight at the same time.
That's right.
So getting there faster, you might not end up being as more profitable. You just,
I know. So, I like that. I think that's a great thing. So, Susan, where can people find you?
Okay. We have my Home Dec Gal website, homedecgal.com. And then the conference website is customworkroomconference.com. And that's coming up September of will be the next event in Concord, North Carolina, September 2019. And then Workroom Tech, Workroom Tech, TECH, as in Custom Workroom Technical Center. So the website is workroomtech.com.
And then I'll also have a link to the podcast, the 30 Minutes with Workroom Tech.
Thank you.
Yep, so that people can find you at all of those. And Susan, I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today and just to dig into, our thoughts and our actions surrounding personal responsibility in our business, as well as supporting others. And I'm just going to rejoice when you rejoice for all these wonderful things.
Well, thank you.
I am rejoicing because, I've put on a conference with WCAA. I know what goes in to a lot of it. I worked at Custom Home Furnishings Academy. I know what goes into it. And so I do celebrate that you were able to do these things for our industry and to keep them going. And I think they're much, much needed. And it's just been a pleasure to be a piece and a part of what you're doing over the years as well.
Well, I look forward to seeing you at CWC if I don't see you before.
Sounds great. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you, Michelle.
Bye.
Bye.
What a great conversation. Susan is so fun to talk to. Her laugh is contagious. I don't think we could talk about anything. I don't care how serious it is. I think at some point in the conversation, we'll find a way to laugh. And so I just can't help but break out into a smile every time we have a conversation. Hopefully you were laughing and smiling even with some of the heaviness of our topics. And also I hope you had a chance to see and reflect. Are you rejoicing when others rejoice and mourning when others mourn? Or is it maybe the opposite? Maybe there's some changes that need to take place. No matter what, let's all look at it and see if we can find a way to work together and support each other. And in my effort to support you, I have a great new resource on my website, scarletthreadconsulting.com. It's a free PDF download, and it's entitled Correcting Your Cash Flow. It's no secret that 82% of businesses fail due to poor cash flow and management. And this document will help you determine if your cash flow negative, neutral, or positive. Again, it's called Correcting Your Cash Flow, and you can grab that on my website, scarletthreadconsulting.com. And everything you do, remember, profit doesn't happen by accident.